G'day guys, Alex Mann here from Melbourne's Election Wire team. Now it's been almost 4 weeks since we stood on this very spot and asked the people of Melbourne what sort of issues were going to be important to them in this year's election. 4 weeks later, we find that the vast majority of them think that this has been the most boring election campaign in Australia's recent political history. So, whose fault is it?
Probably the PR people.
I think it's a combination of media and politicians.
It's almost got that sort of very almost incestuous kind of environment with the politicians, the PR and the journalists. It's all kind of sort of talking amongst themselves, but there's very little outreach to what the general public are actually interested in.
So is it the pollies or the journos that are at fault here? Or is it us, the general public? Rosen is a man who follows these interactions very closely. He's a press critic, a writer, and a professor of journalism at New York University, and he spent the last week here in Australia observing our federal election.
Well, I think you all have something to answer for. I mean, it's everybody's fault in this sense that the candidates are trying to win, and their advisors and the specialists in campaigning know how to isolate the very few variables in the campaign that might permit them to win. Also, another thing that I should mention is sometimes campaigns are exciting because there are really serious crises. And sometimes campaigns are boring because countries are at peace and relatively prosperous. So boring politics sometimes is a sign of strength.
But it seems like something's been missing from this election campaign, and the general consensus is that we, the people, are not to blame.
Let's be honest, the policy's been lacking. There's been nothing really new and innovative so far that's grabbed anyone's imagination.
None of the issues, I guess, that people feel that are important, whether it's climate change or the state of the economy, things like that. I guess none of those things are actually being expressed in the media as well. It just turns into a circus. It's more like coverage is more like a sporting race.
In the heart of inner city Melbourne, Ben Eltham works as a journalist, and even from his side of the game, the gaps in this election campaign seem pretty obvious.
There's just been a lack of vision from both major party leaders and from both major parties.
And just the different topics that they're, talking about, like I don't really see how they affect us as the youth of Australia.
Young voters generally are not taken very seriously in Australian elections. Partly that's demographics. Voters over the age of 55 are the majority of the electorate, and obviously as Australia greys, as our population ages, that's only going to become more acute. So younger voters generally don't get a lot of policy devoted to them. I think that's bad. I think that's a problem for our democracy, but it is a reality in our contemporary Australian electoral system.
So what can we, as the young voters, new to the electoral roll, do about actually getting our voices heard?
So ultimately, if you want people to pay attention to your concerns, you have to organize yourselves, speak up for yourself, not rely on somebody else to do it, and become a force within politics. And then people have to deal with you. They're not going to do it because they're just good-hearted, reasonable, wise creatures.